Happy Thursday, Non-Obvious Nation. It is time for another recap of the most interesting and underappreciated stories of the week. And I am really excited today because football is back. That has been the biggest thing in our household because we are big football fans. We love watching football. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn this week about why that's such a big deal, because I know that not all of you listening are big football fans like me. But actually, this is one of those stories that was so interesting for me because it was about more than football. And what I wrote about in this article was the reasons why the NFL coming back are such a big deal. And one of the big reasons is because I think that sports in general and the NFL in particular have this opportunity to bring people together in a way that we really need right now. Because there are people in the U.S. at least who definitely don't understand each other and they hate each other. And the fact that they can cheer for the same team, I think, is this moment, this opportunity where we can look at one another and say, you can't be totally wrong. You can't be a complete idiot if you like the team I like, right? There must be something right with you. And I think we need that. And I think that college sports has kind of gone away right now, but that had an opportunity to do that in different places because of how loyal people are. So I've been thinking a lot about this and just what the impact of the NFL is. And that was one of the things. And the other piece was, from a marketing point of view, I think a lot about just the advertising force that is the NFL. Because the thing is, like, with the NFL and how stop-starty it is, which I totally get. If you don't like watching football, like, that's probably one of the reasons why, because there's just so much time stoppage, right? And as a soccer player, when I watch soccer, like, there's no stoppage. You can watch straight through and there's no dead space. But one of the reasons the NFL has so much money attached to it is because there's so much stopping and starting, so they can fit a lot of advertising in between. And the advertising industry needs this moment too. This time when people might actually be forced to pay attention to some of these ads, and it's this big moment. And there's a lot of people predicting that the NFL this season, if it continues the way it is, and if things don't kind of get shut down, will be this force that was going to make a lot of money for a small set of people, the owners and the people in the league. So there's going to be a lot of money attached to this as well. But the last piece of this that I'm really paying attention to is, like, when you have all of these players who are in their bubbles and they have their own health infrastructure and their own team doctors and everything, like, the world is going to be watching to see how the league manages to contain the virus. And already, I mean, they're playing in empty stadiums, except in 2 states in the US. So there's 4 stadiums actually that are going to be allowing fans to come and watch the games in person, 2 in Ohio and 2 in Florida. And so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But it's just like this whole story is something that people are going to be watching. And beyond the NFL, one of the other things that I was looking at was just in general, this realm of all of this entertainment that's coming out for people to be able to consume virtually. And one of the things I'm really excited about is this weekend, the entire cast of The Princess Bride, that cult movie it's now a cult movie classic. It's been, I don't know, more than 25 years, 30 years. I don't even know how many years it's been since it's been out. Maybe one of you know who are watching, but the whole cast is coming back together to do a table read of the movie. And it's all a fundraiser for a Democratic committee for the state of Wisconsin. So here's an example of, like, entertainment crossing over into politics, and all of the actors attached with this being unafraid to sort of make a political declaration and say, look, this is a fundraiser and you're going to pay money that's going to then go to a political party. And it's an example of how, like, fundraising in general is just getting more and more aligned with these virtual performances. And there was a cover story actually this week in the New York Times that talked about the nature of how, when we watch all this live entertainment and there's no live audiences, like, all of these things feel missing. And you miss that kind of communal experience. And I totally get that when it comes to sports, being in sports stadiums, or when it comes to being in live theater or like musicals. And I love the audience experience of those. And of course, business events. The one place I have to say, though, where I disagreed with this was when it came to music. I've never liked music concerts. There's way too many people screaming. I'd much rather be able to interact with listening to the musician like one-on-one. And that's what I feel like I get now. So music, the experience of music has actually gotten much better, I think, now. I don't miss the communal concert experience at all when it comes to music, but that's just me. Like, I know other people have a different reaction to that, and I totally get it. But there was a lot of focus on this idea of like, what happens when that live audience goes away? And that's a big, big story that I think we're going to continue to see through the fall as a lot of things start to come back in terms of our experiences and entertainment and all of those sorts of things. Another story that I was reading with a lot of interest and hope actually this week was Microsoft developing a new tool that is automated and in real time may be able to help indicate whether a specific video or a photo has been manipulated in some way. And this idea of deepfakes has been a problem for some time, and it's only going to get worse. But the bigger problem attached to it is when you see something, you think it's real, and maybe they correct it later, but it's too late. And so having these types of tools like this new kind of algorithm that Microsoft's developed is super important because it allows you to see in the moment that what you're looking at might not actually be true. And that's what we're going to need. We're going to need that type of real-time detection as opposed to someone going and analyzing it later and a couple of days afterwards saying, hey, by the way, that video that went viral that 10 million people watched, like, that was fake. It's too late. 10 million people already saw it. So this is the type of technology that actually gives me a lot of optimism, because the more we can develop this, the more we can solve this big problem of not knowing what the truth is, or at least being able to find videos and audio that's and photos that are more truthful. This week, Time Magazine had a cover design of a flag that was just this amazingly beautifully woven flag of a color changing and had this interesting detail behind it. And I was reading a story behind the cover, and it reminded me from a creative point of view that there are so many moments when we're watching something and we don't appreciate just how much effort went into making it authentic. We kind of look at it and we assume, interesting, related to the last story, we assume that it was just photoshopped, right? It was just developed. And in this case, Time Magazine went to a specific artist, Nika Jones, and asked her to create this. And she stayed up all night to meet their 24-hour crazy deadline to actually weave this version of the flag that they could use on the cover of this issue. And to me, it's such an important reminder that this attention to detail with something that maybe people won't necessarily get, they won't understand why you went to that level of attention until they read this story behind it. And only some people will read it, right? Not everybody who sees this cover is going to know that it was actually hand woven by someone who stayed up 24 hours to do it. But when you do know that, it makes it so much more impactful. And I think it was an interesting reminder that we should try and do that when we can, when it's under our control, because that authenticity comes through in the story that we're able to tell afterwards for something like this. Just a quick reminder, if you're listening to these stories, if you're enjoying them, remember to subscribe to my weekly email where I share all of the stories of the week and talk about what's interesting and, yes, non-obvious about each of them. So that is something you should definitely get onto. And thank you for being part of my show. Thank you for being part of all of these stories. And now, the next story I wanted to share with you, just to keep it rolling, is this one, which I called my double take story of the week. So the story that actually made me think. And this was, I'm kind of dominated this week with stories around like media and entertainment, because a lot of things I'm seeing kind of coming back now, at least, especially for some of my international listeners. Like this weekend was Labor Day, the past weekend. And so now a lot of things for the next season, at least here in the US, are kind of starting up. And so you're seeing more of the entertainment, the sports are starting, the schools have started, like all of those things have kind of kicked into high gear. This article about the media and algorithms was fascinating because it was a journalist talking about how he had been writing the same column for 20 years. And slowly it had become less visible and less relevant, not because of what he wrote in the article, but because of how easily or not easily it was found because of the algorithms. And his point that he made in the article is that sometimes the algorithms actually dictate what becomes popular as opposed to the algorithms reflecting what's already popular. So the algorithms end up controlling what we pay attention to. And to some degree, like you probably see this in Netflix. I mean, every time you go into Netflix, there's the top 10 in Netflix right now. And if you've watched some of those top 10, and we've, watched some of them, you finish watching this movie and you're like, why is that in the top 10? That sucked. That was awful. That was terrible. And you wonder if it's actually because it's good or because it got put into this algorithm and then people like us who were suckers watched it, therefore pushing it further into the algorithm. And now we're creating this cycle of crap where it's just like the same thing we pay attention to because somebody said it was good. And there's a danger in that. And the solution that that is posed in this article and that I think is something we need to remember is there's a huge value in human curation versus algorithms doing it all. We still need those editors. We still need those people, those tastemakers who can say, I've seen 1,000 films and this one is worth watching. That opinion has value. So it's not just a database decision. And I think the more we have those chances to learn from those people, the more valuable it's going to be. There was another story this week that might strike you immediately as kind of ridiculous. It was Gucci offering a $10,000 virtual dress for a virtual world. That seems excessive for a regular dress to me, but a virtual dress, I mean, that's extreme. And the reason why they're doing it is actually more interesting than the $10,000 dress itself. What Gucci is doing and really being on the front end of doing is experimenting with these virtual goods, these virtual products that people might buy that relate to their identity, that relate to all of the reasons why people invest in, maybe invest is the wrong word, spend money on really expensive fashion. One of the reasons is because it says something about them, right? It relays a part of their personality. And the more we live our lives in the virtual world, or we have virtual personalities, perhaps through avatars that are in games that we're playing or in social communities that we're part of, the more something like this might feel worth paying for. Now, $10,000 is extreme, but the idea is that if we are willing to pay something for it, then now it's just a negotiation on price, right? That's what struck me as really interesting about this, the experimentation of it. Yes, it goes really far in terms of something super expensive that will definitely create a reaction. But the insight behind it is that maybe one of the possible futures for a fashion brand is going to be having a much bigger suite of virtual goods, of virtual products. And they're investing a lot of time and effort and money in creating some of those things. They're working hard on letting people create their own augmented reality sneakers. I mean, there's a lot of components to what they're doing. It's really interesting stuff. This was from an article, by the way, on Fast Company. And all of these stories are from articles in the media. And in the show notes for this show, you'll see a list of all of the different stories, all of the articles that are mentioned. You can go directly to the story and you can read the whole thing. So if you want to dig further into any of these stories, you'll get the full list of all of those. And if you want to get these stories before anyone else, definitely subscribe to my weekly email newsletter where you can see and hear about those stories. One of the other things that has been really exciting for me kind of heading into September now is that there's events coming back. Not live events, but virtual events. So I just participated in an amazing event hosted by the MMA in Brazil that took place yesterday. We did a live conversation today, and then over the next several, I think it's like next week mostly, there'll be a few more sessions that I'm releasing around a bunch of different topics. This event called the Now Fest is one that I just featured in my email. And it is also free to register, and it's all about behavioral economics, and it's voices that you may not ordinarily hear. So they've worked really hard to find non-Western voices, and they have this acronym WEIRD, which if I can remember right, it's Western, educated, industrialized, rich, developed countries. And what they're trying to do is bring in voices that are not any of those, which is in itself a pretty interesting and noble thing to try and do. and I'm impressed I remember that whole acronym. I think I did it right. But you can register for this right now. Just go to thenowfest.com. I am not speaking there, but I'm very interested in the topic, and I think it's going to be a great event. So that's one to register for. The Brazilian event, you could probably still learn about. It's on my Instagram. It's the MMA, the Mobile Marketing Association. And there's another one coming up called Masters in Robots, which is going to be happening in Poland. And all of these things I would have been there. So I'm bummed that I get to miss out on all these like exotic destinations. But bringing all these audiences together and having all these virtual events, it's so exciting because there's going to be so many more events. I'll get to talk about different things. I'm trying more and more just from a virtual presentation point of view to do more conversational stuff, more interview style. I find a lot of value in doing it in that way. So more of them I'm going to be doing that way. And that's kind of my aspiration for the event. So I'm very excited about all the events that are coming up. I think it's going to be amazing. Final thing we've got kind of a shorter show this week, but I do have a surprise at the end of the show. So stay tuned. We're almost there. The final thing I want to share with you in terms of content and stories this week is my book recommendation of the week. And this one in particular is from John Cleese, who many of you know is very famous comedic actor. He's been in Monty Python and Fish Called Wanda, and I think he wrote the screenplay for that, and just like lots and lots of amazing stuff. He was the technical guy. They keep changing the letter for him, but like the technical guy in one of the James Bond movies. Or perhaps multiple movies. I mean, he's been in lots and lots of things. Amazing wit, hilarious guy. I remember seeing some promotional stuff that he did back in the day, and it was just like amazing. I think I have a DVD set from him that was signed that we used as a giveaway for something. I think I have one of those in my office somewhere. So, I mean, I knowed him for a long time. I knew about his book for months and months and months. I'd ordered it ahead of time. It arrived today. It came out this week, and so I immediately read it. And I wrote a review for it on Amazon. And the first thing that I said in the review is, this book is not funny. And I gave it 5 stars anyway. And the reason why I did that is because it's not a memoir from a funny guy designed to make you laugh. Instead, what he talks about is his process for being creative and for creating the mental space to be creative. And a lot of the stuff that he talks about is maybe a little more academic. It's not exactly what I was expecting from him, although I believe he was a professor for many, many years leading up to the book coming out. But the sort of things he talks about is just letting your unconscious do the work. So, for example, he has a tip where he had a big creative challenge and he couldn't come up with the solution. And finally, he just worked and worked and worked and worked. He went to bed, woke up the next morning, the solution just came to him. And I don't think that's just him. I see this myself in terms of just giving something space. In the way I talk about it, sometimes I say just be fickle, like to let these ideas come out in time. And like that is such a huge part of being creative. And so he talks about that. He talks about the willingness to kind of test ideas and figure out what works and figure out what doesn't. And really, he's one of these people that I look to with a lot of admiration for the career that he's had and what he's learned over time. And I think that, I mean, I wish there was a way actually that I could search on Amazon for books written by people who are, I don't know, over 75. Because the level of experience that they have that they're bringing into a book like that is just amazing. And I think that he is one of those people in that category. And so anyway, I really enjoyed his book. I think that it's probably you could probably read it in half an hour. I mean, it's super, super short. So definitely worth checking out. And as a reminder, every week I share a new book release of the week. And I got to tell you, this is not the surprise, but this is part of it, that every week starting next week, probably I might have more than one book because there's so many books that come out in the fall that I might struggle to just find only one book to recommend to you every week. But I'm constantly reviewing them, and we've got a whole team working on our Non-Obvious Book Awards, which will be out in December, which will be the best nonfiction and business books of the entire year. So we're going to be sharing that. Anyway, final thing, last kind of micro surprise, I guess, is that the format of this show, and I appreciate all of you who watch and record it and watch live, the format of this show is going to be changing a little bit, probably starting either next week or the week after. I'm going to start bringing in guests. And I've got an amazing lineup of guests who are already committed to be on the show for pretty much the next 8 weeks or so. Just really, really interesting people. You're going to love the conversations. It's going to be fun for me too, because it doesn't have to be just a monologue of only me. So it'll be fun for us both. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I would love to hear any suggestions that you've got for anyone that I may want to reach out to, someone who's got interesting things happening, who might be a fascinating person to talk about when it comes to the non-obvious, which is our topic. So that's what I have in store for you today. That's what I have in store for you for the next couple of weeks. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being part of the show and all of your support with everything that I do. I'm so glad to be connected with you. I'm so thankful for your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you again next week.